All right, everybody, welcome to 2MFers. And we are doing the Senate Spotlight series again. And I am, as always, Brax Night Fighter. And with me, I got R.E.M. R.E.M, how we doing tonight?
Doing great, Brax. It's always fun to do these episodes and fun to meet new people and have a conversation with them, although not all of these people are new.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, we have the guild Tatooine with us today. And so Mangry Gamer and Mister Hawk are joining us. Also, kind of hanging around in the background, we have Steel Wheels, the leader of the Alliance as well. So he may or may not chime in throughout this episode. But Mangry and Mister Hawk, how you guys doing tonight?
Good. Thanks for having us on, boys. Weird
Doing
being on
well,
this side
thank
of the
you.
mic, but
Yeah, it's kind of fun to mix it up a little bit.
yeah. I get to sit back. You guys get to drive the podcast. I like it.
Yeah. All right. So, as we've gone through this series, we've done our best to introduce each guild and let people know about the guild and things um, about the guild, the history, and all that kind of stuff. So, as far as Tatooine goes, do we know why that name was chosen for her guild?
So Tatooine predates both. So Mr. Hawk and I are probably the two most longest standing people in Tatooine, and that name predates us. So a little history on Tatooine. So Tatooine was started. So I joined the Alliance March of 2019. Yeah, I think Mr. Hawk, you were probably a little bit after that, right?
September of 19. I went and checked
September.
the logs.
Okay, nice. You did more research than I did. So already the officer is more prepared than the guild leader. But yeah, so I joined when I think we had literally like 10 people, and most of those were alts of other Senate players. There was a couple like kind of casual players that are just taking a step back and figured they'd help start that off. Most of it was alts though. I think like three of them were actually Drake's alts, if I remember correctly, and one was his fiance, and like everybody else was just like alts or casual accounts of other Senate players. Um, so at that point, it was like kind of a guild that was just started as a, at the time we had Mandalore, Force of Endor, Naboo, Ryloth, and Scarif. So I think that was it. I think Ryloth and Scarif were probably in like maybe around 100 million, somewhere around there, GP. So we didn't really have a true starter guild, which is why they kind of like started that up at the time. But that decision and that formation was made pretty much right before I joined the Alliance, when Zorro and our buddy Havoc finally twisted my arm enough to play this game that I was scared of getting addicted to. And sure enough, here we are on a podcast about this damn game. So yeah, so that, and then we kind of just built up from there. Yeah, Hawk, do you remember how many people were in when you joined? Like that was because we didn't really aggressively recruit for a while.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to say a couple dozen, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That's about what I remember too. So we were,
It was not a full guild.
yeah, and that was in September, so that was like 6 months. So just to give you guys an idea, we were probably one of the slowest growing Senate guilds of all time too. But we survived.
Well, so I can remember when Mustafar joined, I believe it was January of 2020. We were told that there were plenty of places that we could move individuals that were not performing up to our standards as we continued to grow.
Yeah.
It didn't occur to me that you guys had been also so recently new as a guild at the particular time. I just remembered the sort of synergy that we were able to create in those early days.
Yeah, so so Tatooine at the time, we were the only place for like players looking to take a step down, either because they just weren't keeping up with the guild or because they voluntarily were like, hey, life's gonna be busy for a bit, I need to take a step back, or hey, I just want to collect shit and like all that. So we were the only option there for a bit. So, we had good relationships with pretty much all the guilds at the time for housing players like that. But we also had like a weird identity, duality of identities, really, of, kind of being a starter guild for a long time too. So it wasn't until we started running into problems and where like we were outgrowing hyperdrive accounts, but like there was nobody else to take them. So we were eventually reached a point where we had to choose: do we want to be casual, or do we want to be kind of a starter guild for eternity or whatever? So we leaned into the casual place, which has always been like a passionate part of me, of like supporting that player type in whatever game that I've played. So that's kind of what we leaned into, and then because I got sick of taking on hyperdrive accounts, we eventually got a couple people to act as GL for Bespin and Dagobah. And I helped. I was posting ads every day for that, and we filled that. We hit the timing perfectly with those two guilds forming, and I think we
Not
filled them up in about 2 weeks or something like that.
not Bespin, Mortis. Bespin was just because
Well,
I was a part of. No, yeah, you are correct.
yeah,
Bespin. Yes, Bespin. Trust me, I've done so many starter guilds, I lose track.
yeah. You were one of the ones that stepped up as a GL for. Were you GL at Bestman or an officer? I forget. It's been so long.
I was the GL for Bespin,
Okay.
and I basically ran Korriban in the early days until Tyali stepped up and we handed the GL over to Tyali.
Yep. And it was a similar story on the Dagobah side with Awesome Guy, both of which were former Tatooine players, which I'm pretty sure that was both of their first forays into the Alliance. So, fun fact. But anyway, I don't know, Hawk, if you had any perspective you wanted to add on, kind of like I could talk for like 2 hours on our
Well,
entire history, so I don't want to drown out the whole podcast in me pontificating on that stuff.
I think the next question coming from Brax is going to be probably asking about your full GL history or your
Ah,
full guild history. So,
fair.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one thing I forgot when I introduced your guild was that you are one of the unique guilds in our alliance, in that you are completely casual, and you started essentially as a casual guild and have been able to maintain that. And I know some of the starter guilds that we have in the alliance were intended to be more casual guilds, but really, um, they kind of took their own path and maybe aren't really casual guilds. So I think getting your story as far as how you've been able to maintain that level of casualness, I think is going to be something that'll be important in this episode. So, but with that, so as far as your leadership, your officer structure, tell us. Obviously, Mangry, you're the GL, but who are your officers? What kind of roles do they play in the guild?
Sure. Yeah. So obviously, Mister Hawk, who's our longest standing officer. Beyond him, we have D Blade, who's also been with us with an alt account, at least since I'm pretty sure he joined the alliance with an alt first, and then brought over his big account to Mandalore, and now his big account's with us because life got busy. But he's been with us for a bit too. And then we have Bat Dad and Boba Fett. Hawk, I'm not missing anybody, am I? Well, oh, and Zorro now too, as an
Yeah,
honor.
I think that's all of them. I really hope I'm not missing anybody.
Yeah, I think that's everybody. Um, Roles, I mean, being a casual guild means that we throw out a few things. Like we don't we don't give a crap about ticket counts and stuff like that. So just full context here, our activity requirements are beyond once a week and participate in at least one phase of TB. That's it. TW is optional to join, but participation is obviously expected if you do join. Um, most of our players far exceed those standards. Those standards are really just in place because we want to make it very clear that we respect life game balance and all those different things. So obviously some of that stuff we don't really care about, ticket counts and stuff like that. Really, the big reason that we have like the officer team that we do is really to bounce ideas off each other for TB, and at times TW. But really, it's also because we're all busy in real life too. So we all have jobs or families or whatever. So we're not constantly able to check in on it. So like having a set of players that are knowledgeable enough in the game that if like you see that in TB, for example, if we see that we're getting close to a star we don't want to cap and a zone needs to be shut down or something like that, knowing that at any given point in time, hopefully at least one of us can have eyes on the situation and shut things down if we need to. So we don't really have like necessarily set roles. I don't know, Hawk, if you had extra perspective.
Well,
Everybody kind of pitches in on everything, I feel like.
Absolutely. Everybody kind of chips in where they want, when they can. And honestly, up until I had listened to some of the other guild spotlights, it had never occurred to me to have a dedicated raid leader or a territory war, territory battle. That was something that had never occurred to me. It just, because of the way our guild operates, it's kind of do it as you want. Obviously the officers want to be on a little bit more frequently and be checking to see if we're going to cap that star, or maybe take a look and see, do we want to start top or bottom in a territory war, and we'll close down the way we don't want to go. We'll lock deployments, things like that. We'll push notifications if we need to, but generally speaking, it's kind of a, I don't want to say just vibe it, but we just kind of
Yeah.
take it easy and go see what we need to do.
Yeah, our officer chat is not overly complicated either. Like if one of us does
No.
an update in game, or if like we're calling an audible, we'll just post it there and then roll with it.
Yeah.
So it's not, and I don't want to make it seem like we're just like shooting from the hip either. Like we do, like Tatooine is what I like to call, when I'm marketing or recruiting the guild. I tend to give it the moniker of casual yet capable. And a lot of that is, it's important to me that even though we have, our players are generally casual, and R.E.M and Brax, I know we've had this discussion too around like, in other chats about like, well, what the hell does casual mean? Are we talking time commitments, competitive of roster and all that? So there's different aspects of it. And I would say that we have players in our guild that represent different aspects of it. We have some that are pretty active players, but they just want to build the squads they want to build. We have players that know exactly what they need to do, have incredibly lean rosters, but just don't have the time and energy commitments to be in one of our higher end guilds. To the point where I've even approached players about taking opportunities with higher level guilds, and they've turned it down because they just don't want to deal with stressors of like CPID or whatever the next new thing that splits guilds apart. They just want to chill with Tatooine. But what's that?
I'll say you actually reached out to me multiple times to see if
Yes.
I wanted to move up to bigger guilds before I ended up taking up an officer role about a year after I joined Tatooine.
And I think I had to ask you a couple times on the officer role too.
Yeah. You sure?
Yeah.
I think that's what's made you sort of unique in the Alliance. It provides a home for players that, are just wanting to log into the game, play the game, be a part of a community, but not feel all of these pressures that
Yep.
come that the
Yeah.
game is trying to throw at you. Like the entire game is built around creating walls that you have to get through, and you just feel the need. It's trying to get you to spend money. And your guild is, from every aspect that you just talked about and what I know about you, seems like one of those guilds that basically just wanting to play the game and enjoy Star Wars and be part of a community. That's the location to go to.
Yeah. And it's really nice that just kind of the very casual approach to me personally helps avoid burnouts. Because
Yep.
I started this game in January of 16, was in a very competitively focused guild, and that led to I was burnt out after the second territory war. And in January of 18, I was just like, hey, I can't do this anymore. I can't be logging in, every day risking getting kicked out of the guild for not getting my 600 tickets, or having to leave and come back to reset my ticket count so that way you can all keep track. And it was just like, I'm done.
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah,
think
because you walked away from the game and then like you started a fresh account with
Yeah.
Tatooine and then brought in your old account to help out with some stuff.
Yep.
We've had a few players like that like quit for like a year and then they come back and they're way far behind on like the Revens or whatever, so they just start fresh. But then they end up bringing in like their awesome guy actually still has his OG account with us that he had done the same thing of he quit for a while, then came back, started his newer account, which is now the GL of Dagobah. He joined that, pretty shortly after Dagobah formed up. But he still got his old account with us, which his CLS team panned out eventually when JKL came around. So it's been interesting seeing situations like that where we have, you know, players that like quit for a while, and now Mr. Hawk has two accounts with us,
Yep.
playing, running two accounts just in a casual guild, and
It's
he's in a
fun.
good spot. Yeah,
Like
well,
the gameplay itself is fun. Everything else notwithstanding, and the guild helps make it fun.
yeah, for sure.
I think from a recruiting standpoint, there's a lot of times a misconception when a guild says that they're a casual guild, and I think sometimes players think, well, if they're casual, they don't care or they
Yeah.
don't try. And from what you guys are saying, that is completely not the case in this. In your guild, it's not that you guys don't care about events, and it's not that you don't try and put forth effort. It's just that you don't deal with all the extra pressures that are behind that as well.
Yeah, and I think the big piece of it is that like you can easily run a casual guild, have a Discord server, and do all that stuff, and just like not put forth the effort to maximize people's time in the game. The way my philosophy with Tatooine has always been, I realize that my players don't always have a lot of time in game, so I want to maximize the time that they do have, right? So us as officers putting forth the effort of putting out orders on the zones during TB, having an actual strategy. Because I can't tell you the number of times we've recruited players and they're like, yeah, our old guild, like, I'm not looking to be high level playing, but like our old guild just had no strategy whatsoever. So like you guys seem to have structure. That's how we actually got Awesome Guy. He was our opponent in a TW match. He's like, yeah, you guys look like you actually have structure. So, can I just join after this match? I'm like, yeah, sure. Um, but yeah, so we put forth the effort to actually like put in some time and effort into building a strategy and putting out orders and stuff like that, so that if people do get in the game, we can give them direction on what they should prioritize. So that way, as a guild overall, we can maximize our rewards, even though we don't have 100% participation in every phase or anything like that. And it's a tricky balance of you know pinging people and like DMing people when we are tight on a phase. It's kind of one of those things where like I feel like if I'm not DMing people and I have the time to do that, and we miss a star by 2 million and there was somebody who just literally forgot to do TB or something, then that's on me, right? But it's a tricky balance because I also don't want to make somebody the promise of, hey, we're a casual guild, but also like I'm DMing you. No, like if I DM you and you can't get on to do it, totally understand. But like I want to make sure I'm putting that effort out there in case you do have a few minutes to spare, right? So
Well, and I think that's one of the biggest misnomers about casual. People hear that and they just assume it's a guild where, probably half the players are, inactive, and they're calling themselves casual because everyone's just playing the game willy nilly without any direction or organization. I don't believe we have a single guild within the alliance that does that, nor would we tolerate a guild in the alliance that doesn't provide proper leadership.
Right.
So, in the case of the alliance, when we talk about casual, it's a guild that is heavily tolerant on your choice on how you want to play the game. And so you're not dictating what in any way, shape, or form how somebody plays the game. You're just asking them and trying to create an environment where they can have fun playing the game. Am I correct about that?
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, we
And,
we we want people to get the most rewards playing the game the way they want to play.
and it's honestly, it's really nice by virtue of having the alliance that if somebody comes in because they're looking for a casual guild and they realize that they actually want to step up and maybe look at more competitive options, there are, we can reach out to other guilds in the alliance and try to get them closer to what they're looking to get out of the game.
Yep, absolutely.
So with all that being said, as far as your GP, like where do you guys fall right now, and like where do you guys like how many stars are you getting in TB and that kind of stuff?
So we are just shy of 200 million. I think we're
Yeah,
probably around I don't know.
we're at
100.
192 million.
Okay, so we'll go back up to like a little under 197 when I rejoin after CPIT with Endor on my main account. But yeah, so we're just shy of 200. We've had a few player movements lately. We were just like within like 500,000 of 200 million, but then we had a couple player movements that squashed that temporarily. It's getting excited and crossing that 200 million threshold, but yeah, so that's our GP as far as TB goes. So on the dark side, we do Geo. We're at 20 stars.
Yeah, we did
In
20.
Yeah, and I think probably the next couple cycles we'll hit another star or two in ships. The way
I
things are shaking out.
I feel like we should have gotten that. I didn't check phase two, but with the bug that we had in phase two, I definitely want to
That
think
screwed us.
that
Yeah,
screwed us on a star. I'm sure it's probably screwed a lot of guilds on
it
a star.
it would have been close still because I know the last time we were probably 10 or 12 million shy of it. And in P4 we were also just shy of one there too. That if we had 100% participation and I really bugged the hell out of people, we might have been able to squeak out that extra star. But it would have been a lot. Like we would need every single person 100% participation, which is a tall order. But so we're close on those ones. On the light side, we alternate between Hoth and Geo. So we're just this next cycle is going to be our second stab at Geo light side. So our first foray, we got 8 stars, which is not the optimal strategy that we kind of deployed, but I wanted to make sure we got to the cam zone to
I want
start.
to say we got a cam shard or two.
I think we got like 2, maybe 3, something
It
like
might have
that.
been 3 because it was 110 months to at our current pace.
Okay, yeah. That 3 sounds right to me. Because we do have some Mandalore and Scare folks with us that are very well versed in that mission. So they cleared it. I came close to clearing it. But so next time we should get a couple more stars because we learned a couple things about what we're capable of. And then on the Hoth side, I think we get 40, close to 41, I think.
Yeah, I believe so.
Do
And
you ever
then
do you
go ahead.
ever plan on revisiting Hoth?
Well, on the light side, we alternate. So every other month we do that. Dark side, I don't know. I might pitch to the guild this time around to do Hoth for the holidays. Kind of like I know Naboo has historically done that, and I think you guys have too at Mustafar, right?
We
Yeah,
did
we did
for light side.
for light side.
Okay.
This year we're going to do dark side just to complete it. It's going to
Yeah.
be just deploy all and we'll get it. But it's, I
Nice.
mean, you want to take over the holidays, a little break, and so that's kind of our theory.
Yeah.
Makes
We're
sense.
we're just going to get that achievement and call it good.
Yeah, I may actually try to do the math on the Vader's Fist achievements because
Would be fun.
it would be fun to get. I do have it on my main from Endor. I just have to do the math to make sure we have enough to do it. But it might be fun to just breeze through it anyway around the holidays. Get a little swig of some Get One while we're at it.
Yeah.
And raid stats, I mean, we're not clearing CPIT, just shy of 200 billion, so we don't really have a mathematical shot at it even, to be honest. But we are probably going to start, starting to get a little bit more serious about at least drilling it a little bit, see if we can start clearing a phase or two here or there. And, kind of work towards it. That way, when we are capable of doing it, we have a decent chunk of the guild that's ready to go.
So I do have a question on that.
Sure.
A guild at your level, kind of toying around with CPIT. Do you think it is in any way worth pushing people to Relic 5 full teams in order to engage CPIT? Or do you think there are other guild goals that are more achievable that provide a better reward?
I think the latter, personally, just because of where we're at. Like, there's just no. I mean, if you ask around, a lot of people say, kind of the lower end of like very lean guilds that are clearing it, I think is like probably granted, this is all pre, Gas Invader, so I don't know how that impacts things, but probably not drastically as far as GP for the guild. You're talking like mid 200s is where you want to be, where you're probably actually able to clear it if you're getting like solid participation. Obviously, that depends on how lean you are and what GLs you have in that mix. But yeah, I mean, I just think that there's different goals. I mean, certainly you could justify just taking, shock clones to Relic 5 or beyond, depending on which one of the clones. Because that's kind of a 2-for-1. You can use it in cam as well as for CPIT.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so there's certainly squads that you could. I think if you have a GL, then yeah, you have a team that you can run through for sure, and you should be taking probably that full squad beyond Relic 5, at least a portion of it, to the point where you probably just have to take a tune or two to R5 to get a full squad. So I'd say, like, if there's synergies with other squads you're building, yeah, go for it. But I would say probably not for if you're building it specifically just for CPIT. That's
Yeah. So you're basically
not worth it.
So you're basically talking Padme, Shock T clones, and
See if
then
Empire even even if it's like a arena team, they may not be like perfect CPIT teams, but those are teams that like you're probably going to take up to that neighborhood anyway, at least with most of the squad.
to get rewards out of elsewhere, but
correct.
You shouldn't be shoving your zombie and your DACA to Relic 5 just for CPIT.
That depends on if you're Rick Astley or not.
I'm gonna say I want to be careful with that.
So if Rick's listening when he hears this, he's gonna have a different answer. But yeah, no, I agree. Yeah.
So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'll say it's definitely, I think an aspirational goal, but not we're going to begin pushing people towards, hey, we want these teams, get these teams ready. We want to try it at the end of the year. It's
that's kind of how we approach, like if we're like when we were talking about getting ready for eventually transitioning to Geo light side, we're like, hey, again, just as a reminder, we're not forcing any squads. If you are looking for squads to build up that will help the guild towards this event or whatever, here's the guidance that we can give you. It's like these squads right here are going to do well in this event, whether it's CPIT or TB or whatever, but we don't really force anybody's hands on that either. So,
well, I think that is the definition of casual.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's definitely, it was when I joined, and then a month later joined with my old account. There was what new characters should I work towards, and it was at that time I was told Geos as a reasonable new new team. Plus, it would help us whenever we got because we were still doing Hoth Dark Side at the time. When we start doing uh, Dark Side Geo, we can start working towards Watt, and it's one of those things where even if you're not working on it, it almost feels like you want to help the rest of the guild, just because I don't know. At least to me, it feels nice to help everybody.
For sure. Yeah.
So, would do being casual, do you have sort of a overall goal for the guild right now? Like, are you saying, hey, do your thing, but kind of sort of on the side, be focused on like is light side geo preparation? Is that sort of kind of your guild wide goal right now, or
Yeah, I mean, continuing to improve performance there. Dark side similar, but I would say that obviously the you can get by with a lot less in Geo Dark side, at least in the first
Yes, you
two
can.
two to three rows at least. No doubt, I have seen phase four, so like I understand the brutality that is Dooku's hangar and all that, but
yes?
you know it, it's definitely the one where, yeah, if we're going to push somebody towards an event where they're like, hey, I'm looking to build a squad into relics, what should I go for? I'm probably going to point them towards a light side team that will perform well in TV depending on their roster, just
Gotcha.
because those teams are going to help you in other aspects as well. Whether it be Hoth TV or Arena, TW, all sorts of other modes that, you know, Chupi OCLS and Padme, all the Galactic Republic tunes, gas, clones, all that stuff is going to help you in other modes anyway. So if people are asking me about like high relics, typically that's where I would steer them, unless there's unless they're like very close to a dark side GL or something like that.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You do. It doesn't happen too often right now, but there have definitely been a lot of cases of, hey, can somebody look over my account? Uh, where would you suggest I go? And right now. It's been it has been kind of pushing towards or recommendations towards light side teams, just because they are typically quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I get DMs about it too, which sometimes baffles me. I'm like, well, here's what I would recommend, but also like ask the guild, because quite frankly, I am not the most knowledgeable person in our guild. We have some really, really strong, knowledgeable players in the game. Not that I'm a schlub, but like there's definitely people in our chats that know mods and know like ins and outs of different squads better than I do. I mean, I've jokingly referred to us as the Mandalore retirement home, for players that are just, taking a break or just looking to back off the game, and slide into retirement eventually. So we get some Mandalore and Scarif players and stuff like that, fairly frequently when we do have openings. Um, so they obviously know a lot of those squads really well, and are we're fortunate to have a really good group of players too that are super friendly and very happy to give advice too. So
But you're the podcast guy. You know what you're talking about.
yeah, but like if anybody's actually listened to our podcast, I am not the brains of the operation, guys. I'm not.
So I will tell you, even in Mustafar, we have learned that the power within the current structure of the game tends to lean a little bit towards light side. Or I should say, I have learned, because I do TV orders and TV plans. And in our initial phases, we're in an international guild, so we try to be friendly to people's times when they can deploy.
Sure.
And so we actually do split deployment in phases that we know we should easily be. and give them early deployment options, a light side and a dark side. And invariably, even in light side GOTB, our dark side still equals our light side deployment in a zone, even after people have already worked out all of their light side tunes. It's sort of interesting how much more powerful the light side is over the dark side is within this game.
Yeah, for
A
sure. Yeah, and
travesty.
yeah, Mr. Hawk, full disclosure, has pretty dark side heavy. I remember when I told them, like, hey, I think we should take a stab at light side. He's like, yeah,
Raw deployment.
this is gonna be just a GP dump, guys. Sorry. So he's very dark side heavy. But yeah, no, we do similar things because we actually have a probably not as high of a chunk as you guys do of international players, but we definitely have some overseas players that I do the same kind of thing of. I mean, there are a few phases right now in dark side where and even in light side geo where there's no sense in waiting. I know we're needing all our deployment after missions in this zone if we're gonna hit the goal. So I just put a focus on that zone. But other phases, usually what we do is give it about. We always leave one zone open, but not necessarily focused. So that way, if people, particularly in a casual guild, even if they're not European, like sometimes, you might have like, afternoon in the US time, I have half hour. I can do all my missions, but I know for the next day I'm going to be swamped with work or whatever. So, people just do their missions and dump their GP. So we always leave one zone open. But then I also do the way I structure my pings a lot of times to the guild to as like reminders to do TB stuff. A lot of times I do try to factor in the European time zone because I'll put out like a morning ping or something like that to try to catch people before they're in bed and it's too late, right? So um I do try to factor that in as well when we're doing stuff.
All right. So, how about some successes, some achievements that the guild has achieved? Anything that you want to point out there?
I mean, I don't have the exact numbers, but I know we've got a pretty good was it territory war win rate. I know you were keeping track of that for a while, Mangry.
I have the screenshots. I'm very far behind on posting those screenshots and actually doing the tally. So we're gonna blame that on having a lazy GL, but yeah, we're probably about 85% win rate last I calculated it.
I
So
mean, that always feels good.
yeah, no, and that's true. Despite the fact that like I feel like a lot of our focus tends to be on TB, some of us do get a little ruthless with TW, myself included at times. There are shreds of me that show during TW at times, where we want to crush people. But yeah, and that part of that comes out to too that TW is optional, so usually we're unintentionally sandbagging pretty much every match. So sometimes we get a guild that equally sandbags and we have a really good match. Actually, I had a pretty wholesome experience where we lost in the last hour about a month or two ago. And I actually tracked down, it was like a guild that was part of a small alliance of some YouTube streamer. I forget the guy's name. I kind of feel bad that I forget the guy's name off the top of my head. But I tracked down the guild server and had a good chat with those folks. But it was a good, wholesome, kind of good game type of thing, and they were actually good sports and they were having a lot of fun with it too. So it's but yeah, a lot of times other times we crush and it's like not remotely close, like they don't even break our front wall, so
Yeah.
it ebbs and
Well,
flows.
and it works out well with kind of the I feel like we're using the word casual a lot on this, but it's kind of up to the individual if they want to go heavy on defense, heavy on offense. I'm terrible at this game, so I put both my rosters on defense. And it seems to work fairly well for me. And I usually don't have a tremendous amount of time in the day for attack, so it does double duty.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a
So
lot
I
of players like that, that like especially these Mandalore players. Like I forget what the MacGruber Cherry put on, like it was something silly, like 400 or 500 million on defense. I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude. But yeah, they didn't break the front wall that match. So,
So I have a personal friend that's in your guild, meaning some guy I take vacations with,
yeah,
and that's all he wants to do is crush. He
yeah.
literally logs in every night as he's going to bed, and he just wants to smash buttons and
hmm
and crush. And so he loves TW when he can get in there and just smash his buttons and beat your opponents. That's one of his greatest joys in life. Now,
It
whether he's effective or not, I do not know, but he loves doing that.
Nor do I, because that's another thing we don't really check. I mean, I
Well,
do take a look at banner counts, kind of, especially if we're like lagging and I have like 10 people that are posting zeros, then I get on people. But
Yeah.
because that is one thing that gets under me is that, like, if you're gonna join, you gotta participate, because
Yeah.
I make it pretty clear that, like, hey, if you don't have the time, don't join, or join and do heavy defense, because uh like it actually ends up working out that we don't have like one part of the guild that like overly favors like defense versus offense. Is that, like, we have some pretty ruthless attackers, to be honest. So
Absolutely.
it balances out, oddly, because that's one of those concepts that, like, I get players from other guilds that the two things that people are not used to if they're not used to casual guilds and stepping down in activity is, one, um, that concept of, having the freedom to choose either, heavy defense or offense, or a balance of the two, or not having to join TW altogether. But the other concept is platoons in TB, is that we do use the bot, the echo based bot. So my philosophy is, make sure you cover your own assignments, or that your assignments are covered by others. But if you have extras after you're done with missions and you want to cover as many assignments as you want, I don't care. But other people are like, what the heck? Like, all my assignments are covered. I'm like, I don't care. We're a casual guild. I can't wait around for somebody who was assigned Aurora or whatever, and to show up, and he's like, the last guy there. I'm like, if you have the tune, fill it. I'd rather get that stuff filled up quick than wait around, because what, you want to fill your platoon assignment? I mean, after people get used to it, they usually stop asking that question. But it's an adjustment when they're coming from competitive guilds, where it's like, you only cover your own assignments. Everything else is, to whoever it's supposed to. But we don't have the luxury of time, of we don't lock down our missions or anything like that before platoons are filled. We do your platoons, do your missions, deploy, you're done.
You'd be amazed. MF doesn't run that particular bot.
Mhm.
We have always run through the theory of, your roster better than any sort of computer does. Make the sacrifices that you feel like you can make, and it's always worked out for us. Now, in my starter guilds, I run the bot because people don't know enough about the game to be able to really make those decisions for themselves. But you have a lot of
Sure.
really educated players that know that they're not going to use
Yeah.
in a battle in any sense, shape, or form.
Or you know when you can let go of Nasty Basti, or GG, or whoever in Dark Side too, like, because you
Yeah.
can get by with other tunes and still get a 4 out of 4. So
Yeah.
And that's something I haven't. Again, it's not something that has happened particularly recently, but I do remember when we first started shifting to Geo, Dark Side Geo. There was a lot of, hey, can somebody take my Darth Revan? It's the one Dark Side team I
yeah,
have, and I'm supposed to give up my Darth Revan. Can somebody cover it for me?
yeah, yeah.
And that was always really cool to see other people go, yeah, no, I've got enough other teams. I'll go ahead and put mine in.
Yep.
and that is exactly why we don't use that bot, because it will assign tunes to a particular platoon or whatever, and there may be somebody that has stronger teams that can that it can willingly give up that tune. And so that's kind of what we've always sort of pushed to people is, if you can give them up and you still have competitive squads, then we would rather you do that than somebody who their Darth Revan is their strongest character and they're going to have to give them up, and then they're not as competitive in the combat missions.
Yeah. I run the bot just because, one, it's a sanity check for myself to make sure that we have coverage for it. But it's also for the rest of the guild. Again, a lot of times some of our players don't have tons of time to play the game, so I want to guide them in the best direction that helps us overall. So I want to make sure we have coverage, but fully knowing that, like, we have some big accounts that are, like you said, knowledgeable enough in the game that, like, they know they don't need some of these tunes because their roster is stacked with other teams that can cover the missions just fine.
And by the way, this conversation has come up before. I want to let it known there is a way to manipulate the bot to make those better decisions.
Yep, absolutely.
The issue that we're talking about here is we're talking about casualness, how much time officers are willing to put into managing a guild, and also how much they trust their guild members to make the right decisions. So in your case, ain't no one got time for that. In our case, no one has time for that. But in our case, we also, and it sounds like in your case, you have a lot of people that are smart enough to work around the choice that you've made.
Yeah, and you touched on an interesting concept there too, is casual guilds also have casual officers and GLs to a degree. So, like, we also, like, that capability is absolutely there in Echo Base to, like, fine-tune that a little bit more. A lot of times I don't have the time to, like, to delve into it, so I just kind of, like, let it ride with whatever. Other than, like, I'll check the box for, like, only fill even amounts of platoons. That way we're not wasting, tunes on a fifth platoon or something like that. But yeah, I don't get too into the nitty-gritty. Same reason why we don't get into the bots too heavy, because frankly we just don't have the time to mess with them ourselves. So only so much time in the day.
I just wanted to make sure the bot lovers knew that we understand that there are options out there. So don't come screaming at us. We're just stating our experiences.
It's really cool that the bot does that. I was unaware.
Well, I
It's
think
like on another tab. You do have to, like, tinker with it, but it's it's
Gotcha.
one of those things. A lot of people don't really need that unless you're, like, hyper nitpicky, or I shouldn't say
Right.
nitpicky. There are
Particular?
some beautiful minds in our alliance that are very calculated. So Awesome Guy that it's traded because their Dagobah is a little bit lower GP. Well, I don't know what they're at net these days, but they historically have been a little bit lower GP than us, but are much more competitive. So a lot of times, like, they'll outperform us in certain things, particularly shards for Cam and Watt. But, like, a lot of times we end up comparing strategies, or I look to him for advice on what they're capable of, because a lot of times, star count wise, it would be in the same ballpark. But he's got everything, like, spreadsheeted out and calculated everything, and it's incredible. So like, I know some people, beyond having the time for it, they just enjoy spreadsheets. I despise spreadsheets. So just to give you.
well, I think that your territory war win percentage and your TB performance actually speaks a lot to your culture, in that even though you have a casual guild, you also have players that recognize, like, yeah, hey, I have the freedom to do what I want, but I also still need to do what's needed for the guild to perform well. So I think that's kind of a testament to your culture that you've built there, and that even though you're not requiring specific things, or you're not requiring people to join TW, the ones that do, when they do it right.
Yep, absolutely. And that's really our goal.
All right. So with that, is there any specific members of your guild that you'd like to point out, congratulate, thank?
Hawk, do you want to go first?
I mean, honestly, to one of the other officers, D Blade is constantly stepping up, just doing a tremendous amount of work on the officer side, doing pings or locking down platoons. They just
Yeah,
the
he's a
yeah.
godsend for sure. He's another one of those. I think I'm pretty sure this is how it came about, but because that benefited other guilds. Like he needed a home for his alt. He hung out with us. He was pretty early on an officer because he's incredibly knowledgeable. So he's now his main account is with us too, just because of time commitments and stuff. But 100% agree with that one. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there, but I wholeheartedly
Not at
agree with
all.
that
Yeah,
one.
yeah. I know there's other people, but I feel like most of the people that I'm thinking of are people that I think we've given to other guilds, um, just by the nature of our of the way the alliance works, and actually kind of yeah, lots of people. We've got former members of Tatooine that are still in Tatooine's chat that are knowledgeable as well, that answer questions. I don't know. Once you're a member of Tatooine, you just kind of stay a member.
You're always a member of Tatooine for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah,
You
it's
know, and go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, to the point where I've even had a couple players recently, actually, that so they had left a while ago because they effectively like quit the game or whatever, or because they were taking a break from the game because they knew life was going to be crazy the next 6 months or whatever the case may be. And then recently, I've gotten pinged by two of them saying, "Hey, I'm back playing the game more active. Do you by any chance have any openings?" And at the time that both of these folks pinged me, we didn't. I'm like, "Hey, yeah, we'd love to have you back, but like we're full right now. I can either kind of waitlist you for Tatooine, or if you want, I can definitely work you into one of the other GP appropriate guilds and get you back into the alliance." And they're like, "Yeah, no, I'm good. I'll wait. We had a really good experience with you with Tatooine, so we just want to go back to Tatooine." So, like you said, once you join Tatooine, you never truly leave, even if you do leave. So, yeah, I mean, like you said, we have a lot of members. As far as current members, uh, everybody's really just doing their part. We've had some good successes with some GLs recently. I know Naomi Ren, I think, had like a year-long grind out for SLKR and finally just got
yeah.
them. And I know Rain Mac had he just recently got Jedi Master Luke. So we've had some good successes there, but overall, like, taste of the rainbow in Tatooine is the joke that I've made before, because if you go into our chat, because of how our roles are structured in our alliance server, yeah, you get so many different colors in there because we have people from all sorts of different guilds actively chatting in there too. So we've had some good success stories on some, whether it be Comrade, going up to Endor, or Mutilator more recently, who's now an officer in Endor just recently. I'm not even sure if you do that, Hawk, or not, but
I
he
didn't.
just recently, actually, after Comrade just recently actually left Endor, so he ended up ironically taking his spot. So trade one Tatooine member in Endor for another for an officer. So
That's
um,
I'd to there was a 'cause we'd kind of been maybe prompted a little bit on some questions, and favorite non-guild members in the alliance. I actually had
maybe we should just
both
transition into
Comrade
that
and
one.
Yeah,
That's
might as well go.
Mutilator, and actually had Dr. Zenitram as well. All just
Yeah, Dr. Z was awesome.
former Tatooine members that are onto other guilds, and they're still in our chat. And
Yep.
it's really nice to see that people still hang out with the casuals.
Yeah, because it's interesting because the Tatooine today, we've gone through a few different phases where we've always had the same overarching culture, but there's like been phases, I feel like we're in kind of like a newer culture where a lot of our like players that are with Tatooine now, there's definitely some vocal voices, but still a lot in our chat. Our most vocal voices are people who aren't even with us anymore. um so like people like we just mentioned, or our boy Darth Ewok, or
I
not
was just
sure.
thinking of Dorothy.
Dude, he's the man. I'm still trying to get his ass. He's actually just DM'd me a few minutes, but
Yeah, the neon Ewoks need to come
yeah,
back.
they do. I'm wholeheartedly trying to get him back, and he will. He's a funny one too, because he used to go by, so he's gone three different names that I remember anyway. So there was, when he first joined the Alliance, I think it was Lazy John or something like that. And then it was Not Sure, and then it was Darth Ewok, and then I think he switched back to Not Sure at some point.
He's not.
Yeah, he's just not sure of his name.
Yeah.
Is really what it is.
No, he's not sure currently, I believe.
Yeah, he is, I think. But yeah, so he joined us, and then he joined. I think he joined Camino for a bit in the early days of Camino, and then he came back to us.
Yeah, he went with a newly created like starter guild because he was really big on helping newer players develop their rosters.
Yep. And then he
Yep.
came back. Then he left again. Then he came back. Then he moved up to Endor. Then he went to Korriban. Was it with you, Rem? That he was with Korriban for a
That's
bit.
how I knew him. He was not sure in Korriban. I believe he's still there, actually.
No, so he came back
Did he?
to Tatooine. Then he quit the game for a bit. Then he came because of real life stuff. But then he came back to the game with so he's outside of the Alliance now. He's a guild leader actually of a casual guild that's not far off of our GP, so it's entirely possible we could get matched one day in TW, which would be pretty fun. But
Well,
We've got a number of people lined up to take on his Ewoks if it happens.
yep. Dibs
no.
though. Dibs. Well, and then we've also had Wheels. So I see him in chat too. Wheels and Oryx. In the early days, they were both very helpful. So full disclosure, when I started playing this game, I had absolutely zero intention of running anything or being a leader or anything. It just kind of naturally happened because Drake was the GL at the time, but not really. So nobody else was really like taking the reins. So Drake had approached me. He's like, "Hey, do you want to be the GL? Because you seem to be naturally, kind of coordinating people and stuff." So I'm like, it's probably a similar conversation actually, Hawk, as I've had with you about like, "Hey, do you want to be an officer?" And you're like, "Yeah, no, I don't. Like, I don't think I have the time for that or anything." I'm like, "No, trust me, you do." It was the same kind of thing with Drake. Is like, "Yeah, you'll be fine. It'll be fine." But fortunately, the only reason it was fine is because of the help of folks like Wheels and Oryx, and in the early days, these very knowledgeable officers and leaders and players, as well as so Zorro, who's also a very close personal friend of mine. Most of my tips, especially in the early days, I would get from him. So as an experienced officer and stuff like that, he set me on the right track as well, which is how I learned to be GL and found all those resources as we went. So it was, I don't want to make it seem like I was some like, knowledgeable leader from day one, when 100% not. For like the first year, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. So definitely some of those non-guild members in the Alliance, particularly in the early days, had a very big hand in making sure that we survived, honestly. So
Well, so in interest of brevity, you guys have already been hitting this question pretty hard, but we still like to make it a focus question. I think Brax would agree. And it fits right in this with what you guys have been doing. Your favorite non-guild member in the Alliance?
I can't pick
Somebody who's not in your guild.
I'm gonna roll out the podcast crew and then Zorro, Havoc, and Tazzy, who are all close personal friends of mine. And I guess Darthy walks out because he's not in the alliance. I don't know. I mean, I could be the brown noser and go with wheels. I could
It's
play
always,
that card.
it's always a fair answer.
Nobody will argue with you on that.
Oh yeah. No, but I mean, truthfully, like we have such good rapport with all our members, past, present, and future, and even just friends. You know, we also have Martyr and well, I guess Zoro's technically a member of Tatooine now that he has his alt with us, but previous to that, like he's been in our chat for a long time too, and was very active when Martyr and him have never been part of Tatooine before. So, yeah, I mean, it's just been. And shout out to Endor as a whole for me because a lot of times like my main account used to be with them for a bit before I took a step back in competitiveness on that main account too. It brought it back to Tatooine, but a lot of our culture and a lot of the way they run things from an officer, I've kind of taken and adapted to fit with Tatooine to the point where like we're just kind of a casual version of them to a degree culture wise. So I've really tried to like a lot of it subconsciously, but some of it's pretty actively tried to emulate a lot of their culture. So, you know, props to Force Endor too in their officer and leadership team.
All right, so well done, Mangry, for naming about everyone.
Listen, you know me, I talk to everybody and like,
Yes, I do too.
I make
I would
friends.
still name,
All right.
I would still name one person. So, Mr. Hawk, what was yours?
I don't know if I could pick one, but it'll certainly be less than Mangry. I've got three written down. I'm gonna go with Dr. Z because they were a great source of knowledge for the time that they were in Tatooine before they went on to another guild.
Yep, absolutely. He was great.
All right. So, what has been the biggest challenge for your guild so far?
So it depends on the phase. You know, obviously the big hurdle, you know, of like our first dark side geo attempt and clearing HSTR were both big milestones for us. There were challenges, but like positive, like obtainable, like we will get there and it'll feel great when we do it because we didn't murk or anything like that. So like when we beat it, we did actually have Dr. Zenitram with us at a time as a safety net. So like he ended up being able to help us out a lot. But for the most part, we crossed that line on our own with the, you know, everything that we built up. And that always felt good. As far as biggest challenges now, at the spot we're in and the way the game is structured with Relic 8s, it's a little trickier because like our next big hurdles are, you know, obviously increasing performance on light side Geonosis, which is obtainable. It's a slower growth thing, but we should be able to see progression as we go with it. CPIT is a little bit more of a discouraging one because the way everything is structured and the way that that's kind of a relegate wall. And just the coordination, participation, and the sheer GP and relics that are needed to get to that one. There's a reason we're not really like pushing that one on people because it's just gonna. We have people with us they're, you know, like Jedi Bookworm, for example. I had approached her about moving up to a different guild, and they were like, yeah, no, I'm good. I don't really want to deal with the headache of like CPIT and all that stuff. So I'm good. I'm happy here. So I'm like, all right. So I know that I have players like that like naturally, if that's our next big, you know, kind of waypoint where we're at GP wise, it's tough because that's a longer road that requires some focus that I'm not really willing to push the guild on at this point. So it'll be a little bit, I think, before we cross that one off.
So maybe the biggest hurdle ahead is being able
Is
to attain your goals, but still maintain your casual culture.
Absolutely.
yeah, and just the way CG is structured it. I think when they release, depending on how they release Relic 9, who knows, maybe they make some adjustments to how they approach Relic 8, and open that up to other sources beyond just Conquest and CPIT. But yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was like, give us Relic 8 materials in as like a GOTB drop, something.
Yeah, it's really, increasingly so, CG's kind of putting the middle finger up to casual players that they know won't be able to cross some of those lines. Even Conquest, which is they are seemingly incredibly tone deaf on. Like, they looked at the data and said, well, people are clearing it too quickly, so let's just artificially slow it down. When meanwhile, casual players are struggling to hit boxes 4, 5, 6, in Conquest, and without being able to do that or CPIT, and if you don't have a deep wallet, you're not getting the next wave of GLs because of the Rex. So it's that's really, kind of like trying to keep a positive attitude and focusing on those things in the environment that CG is creating, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So, we'll get there. Hopefully they make some adjustments to be a little bit more casual friendly, but in the meantime, we have other squads and stuff like that we can chase and are perfectly obtainable to play the game we want to play.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the reality is that CG's business model is to keep you in a constant state of panic.
Yep, absolutely.
It's like, oh, I'm behind. I'm behind. I'm always behind. I can never catch up.
Yep.
I remember the panic farm spreadsheets for Jedi training Rey and whether or not you needed to start buying for the veteran smugglers back when
Oh
she
yeah.
was first added, and it was just the subreddit was, it was not a happy time.
Yeah,
And
well, and I will give CG that prop, is that the journey guide and everything they've done with that,
Yeah.
of like not putting every single event on a 3-month cycle like that, it was helpful. So they have been making some improvements there, and just recently being able to sim the assault battles is a big boon as well, because I don't have to sit through 8 hours of my bounty hunters bashing their head against the wall trying to kill, rebels and whatnot. So,
Yeah. All right. So next question is kind of more of a personal question for each of you. So if you could have anything added to the game, what would it be? And Mangry, you may have already answered this before, because I think maybe we kind of kicked around something like this on the round table before. But now that some time has passed, maybe what is something that you would potentially add to the game or change about the game?
more ships and ship modes. That's going to piss people off, and I don't care. Do it.
Even if it creates what they've recently created.
Well, so there's two pieces of it. Is that one, I want them to flesh out some of the fleets that they have available, right? Of like
Yeah.
resistance, or as much as I really don't want to see more, of new trilogy content in the game, quite frankly. They do need it in the ship department. But even some of the other, you have these straggly ass ships just chilling out there that, like, like the Sith.
Give me a Sith fleet.
Yeah, give me a Sith fleet that I can use Sith bomber and Sith fighter, and then it makes sense. And I get that they're used in some counters and they have their uses and all that stuff, but I think, and keep in mind, I'm also somebody who is going straight after Executor, because one, if you're going to tackle something that is like pinnacle content at this point, yes, I'm not going to feel great about putting an R8 on Piet. Or, as much as I love Boba Fett, there's probably other tunes I could rather spend that Relic 8 on.
That Relic 8's gonna hurt.
It's gonna hurt, although his ship is better than it was, and
Yeah.
he will hit hard, I'm sure, when I get him up there. But it's much more manageable and less burnout intensive, in my opinion, than going after a GL, because GL, you're talking, 10 to 15 or whatever it is, depending on the GL, of tunes that you have to take to relics, um, some of which are going to hurt a lot more than Boba Fett or Piet. So it's much more manageable, and it's a finish line you can cross in less amount of time, and is less prone to burnout than chasing a GL. Even though a GL is probably more impactful to your overall roster, that's kind of where I'm at. And then the second piece of it is that, we have all these ships, and at this point, a lot of us, when you get up north of 4 or 5 million, you have probably 4, maybe even 5 really solid fleets. So give us more stuff to do with it. I have this, these ships that just go to waste in a lot of game modes. Even in GAC, you put 2 on defense, 2 on offense, ideally. Sure, maybe you need a cleanup fleet, but other than a cleanup fleet duty, that 5th or 6th fleet, as you get bigger, isn't doing anything for you. It's just collecting dust. So, give me something to do with it that's a little bit more engaging than just basically arena matches.
So you partially gave the answer to the question that I was going to throw at you. I agree with you that we need to see more dynamics within ships. The problem is, how do you want them introduced? Because, fleet arena energy is mostly spent now on Gear 12. Once you get to a certain point, if you're a free-to-play player and you're focused to push that towards farming new ships, you're now not able to farm the gear you need to effectively make your roster run. But
which is why I think if they make that investment more worthwhile by incorporating fleets into, let's say, a raid, or they've already started playing around with this with the galactic challenges of the upper level tiers just recently was ships, so they're clearly going that route with that. But
I was going to argue using the ships that you have to gain shards for ships that they introduce, creating a new way of earning shards for ships by rewarding you for focusing on ships, right?
Agreed. Yeah, I think that the reward structure could be, they could incorporate that investment and make it so, if you're interested in ships, use your ships to grind out more ships, or the characters for that ship, depending on, how they continue to release ships.
I love the characterless ships. Personally, I think that's the way they need to go in the future.
Yep. Agreed.
Because there's the fact that you have to level up a shitty tune. Wow, I was probably the first person to say it.
Hey, it was you. It was you this time, man.
Yeah.
I'm not taking blame for this one.
To level up a poor tune in order to have an effective ship is really a hard decision for anyone to make when, as you said, considering most of the engaging content is not within the ship culture. It's a really hard thing for players to kind of wrap their purpose behind. It's a struggle, especially when people are playing the game for fun in a casual guild like yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand.
I'm definitely feeling that right now. I'm working on the gas grind, and I'm looking at Jedi Knight Consular, and I'm just looking at, okay, what do I got to put you to get you to 40,000 for your ship?
Yeah.
What's the bare minimum I can do for this tune?
So if you didn't catch a glimpse by me saying that earlier of how dark side focused he is, this man's looking at his counselor because of his light side tunes that he has available. So
yeah, it's not.
Where we're at. I mean, on my alt account, to be honest, I've been looking at Mace for a little bit if I chase chase gas. So
I just took Mace Windu up to gear 11 to get my capital ship up to
yeah, exactly.
40,000.
That's what I was thinking about doing too.
Oh.
All right. Mr.
So,
Hawk, what is your thing that you would like to see added to the game?
So I've got two answers for this. I've got a real answer and a fun answer. The real answer, honestly, make the gear crunch easier. I know it's a scalding hot take, but it sucks. Like just the amount of effort required to get your tunes up to gear 12 to gear 13 to then start looking at relics, and as relics become more and more required for this game, you got to make the gear crunch easier. You know, we got double drops for all of the older tunes, you know, the ones that have been out for 6 months or more. And I mean, I don't know if they can necessarily do that for all maybe non-gear 12 gear. Give us double drops on stun guns, on what's it, Carbontes, on the things that we all need thousands of, it feels like. It just, they have to figure something out, and challenge crates are not the answer.
Yeah, that's fair.
And for my quote unquote fun answer, honestly, I remember hearing kind of rumors of this vehicles. Now, obviously, they haven't handled ships very well, but maybe they can handle vehicles well. You know,
Yeah. They said we were gonna get that.
Yeah.
Sure,
Still waiting.
sure. I think that would be fun. Just something else to do with the poor tunes that you don't want to gear up, that we now have to gear up because, you know, you need that, you know, I'm drawing a blank. You need that Naboo officer for the speeder that was just added. Or you
Yeah.
know, whatever. But I don't know. I think it could be an interesting take, or an interesting way to play the game in maybe a way that it is, I don't know, similar to the squad battle, but with some additional twist to it.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
All right. So, kind of to encapsulate everything, if you were talking to somebody outside of the alliance about your guild, what is something or some things that you would like them to know about your guild? Like if you're trying to sell your guild to somebody, what do you want them to know about your guild?
Hawk, you want to take this one first?
Sure. We're see, let's figure out all the corporate buzzwords. We're a laid back, fun focused. No, we're laid back. We let people kind of work at their own pace. If that's wanting to relegate all your Ewoks, that is okay. If it's working towards some specific team, for example, I didn't want Ahsoka Tano for the longest time. Just because I didn't like the character, and eventually was like, no, she's actually really good in game.
That's awesome. Yeah,
she is, but at the time, she was.
I may have made a bad judgment call in making Hawk an officer, guys. I apologize.
I know. It's no, like she's great now, but at the time, it was, you know, it was a rough time in my life. She was the epitome of everything wrong with Star Wars.
I'm about to kick you off of this podcast.
I say Rem is probably actually bleeding right now.
I'm going to let you go on.
I've got a good friend who loves Ahsoka and has actually gotten me to watch the Clone Wars, and I've honestly gone a full 180 on her. She's a great character, and I'm not saying that just to not get kicked off here.
Good save. Good save.
Yeah.
It's just been really nice to be able to help people work towards the rosters they want, not the rosters that they feel they need to have. That was a long answer, and I don't know if I actually answered it.
It's not going to be as long as mine, so you're good. No, I mean, I would echo everything that Hawk just said. You know, again, I think that the biggest thing about us is that we're, like I said, casual yet capable and super friendly. Like, we've not had anybody post a picture, a close up of their ball sack. We've not had anybody have a drunken explosion. We have not had anybody just like totally tell somebody off in an acronym mocking their guild rules. We haven't had that stuff happen because we are so laid back. Not to say that, watch probably in a week ago, we're going to have somebody go off the handle or something like that. Now that I'm saying this out loud, but, a lot of that's happening because of, just our overall laid back culture and the fact that like we're an open door. Like, I know some people are a little bit more closed door with their guild chats and stuff like that, and nothing against any of those guilds. We're not like that, and part of that is because, like I said, we're a taste of the rainbow. We've since day one have always had members of other guilds in our guild. So, our doors are always open. We're always welcome. We've had, officers of other guilds come to, like just to see things and see how we run things so they understand how a casual guild is run. At least our style of doing that. So, we're friendly, we're approachable. All those anecdotes, by the way, those aren't just random things that popped up. That's all happened to guilds, successful, strong guilds in our alliance. And I'm sure there's plenty of other stories that of people quitting or getting booted from guilds in more dramatic fashions. But yeah, so I think that's the big piece of it from a player perspective. I do want to also mention that one of the things that I want people to understand about a guild, like I said, at an alliance level, is that and R.E.M and Brax know that I've harped on this in our security council chat when we've started new guilds and stuff like that, is really having a casual guild in the mix of more competitive guilds is just important for the overall alliance. So we get, like we've mentioned, there's been cases of members that have been with us that have been more competitive, and now they're still with the alliance in more competitive roles in other guilds, as officers or players. And then on the same side of things, I've always been compassionate for casual players as a whole. So we've certainly had a core that stick with us, that's just how they want to play the game. But then we also get folks from more competitive guilds that need to take a step back for a bit, or maybe they're just taking a step back forever. And this is just the pace they want to play the game now. And with us being here, in the alliance, we've been a conduit for both directions. And we're always here for other guilds to help out, if you have players in those situations. So it's really not to toot our own horn, but I feel like it's been a big boon to the alliance of in creating a healthy ecosystem. So I'm always an advocate for casual players and our existence. So that's my pitch on why we're awesome, basically.
Well,
So much more eloquent than mine.
well,
No, you were way more eloquent in the first piece of it, for sure. I was just more long-winded about it.
Outside of the ball sack drop, that was a really good pitch.
That's not. It's not an actual swear word, all right?
No, it isn't. It's just a horrible image that everyone didn't need to hear.
Try seeing the picture. Ask Martyr about that one.
Awful.
But I can tell you, I have a couple personal friends that play in your guild, and I sent there for a reason, because I trust in your leadership. I believe your guild was perfect for the level of play that they were capable of, willing to do, and I knew you would treat them fairly. And that was a hard thing to do because they're personal friends and they were a part of Mustafar for a long time, but you took them in. They're still playing the game to this day. They still enjoy it, which tells me that you're doing things right. So I want to personally thank you. I don't know what Brax has to say as we start to close out this episode, but thank you very much for all the work that you've done, your leadership, and your members as being part of this great alliance and helping us fill out the different elements of what we're trying to create as an alliance.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the trust.
Yeah, I think think this for me, like I'll probably echo what Mangry said there, and just that the casual guild is an important piece of the infrastructure to the alliance, and that we have, regardless of how dedicated you are to the game, everybody still has a real life, and there are people that aren't invested enough and don't have the time, and have other priorities where being in an intense guild isn't something for them. And so if you have an alliance full of those kind of guilds where just everybody is all out intense, then what happens is you lose players not only from guilds but also from the alliance. And so having those other guilds that maybe are steps down or steps up in certain cases, to go to within the alliance is what I think makes our alliance special. And a lot of times we may lose a player from a guild, but we still at least keep them in the alliance family. And kind of to your guys' point about having multiple people in your chat, I think there's probably quite a few guilds that can probably have somewhat of a similar story, in that you've got former members that maybe are in another alliance guild, but they're still in your chat, and it's nice to be able to still kind of connect that family and have those other avenues that you can bounce ideas off of, and keep in touch.
For sure.
All right, so I think that's going to wrap up our episode with Tatooine. Mangry, Mr. Hawk, I appreciate getting to hear about your guild, and getting to learn more about you guys. And is there anything that you guys wanted to say in closing or anything?
I'll let you go first.
It's rough, coarse, and gets everywhere. Tatooine.
Brax actually did do an ad for us that I used to use, that where it basically, what did I? Don't be afraid of the sand or something like that. Embrace the sand or something like that. Join Tatooine.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And he actually made an animated GIF with like sand going by, which
that's
is pretty
amazing.
funny. Yeah. It was like Kid Anakin walking through the desert with like animated sand coming through. It's pretty great.
I just really appreciate you inviting me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for having us, guys. It's fun.
Absolutely. R.E.M, anything in closing there?
No, I just I want to say I've really been enjoying doing this series. We've gotten to flush out multiple different types of guilds, and we plan on continuing to do that. From here on forward, though, we're going to throw out requests. If you want to bring your alliance guild onto our conversation, please let us know. We understand this is going to be like herding cats, but we want to highlight every guild in this alliance as this moves forward. So just engage us, let us know that you're interested, and we'll start working out future time periods.
Rem's got his cowboy hat on and he's ready to herd.
Yeah. And trust us, even if you don't reach out to us, we eventually will reach out to you, but we'll take anybody who's willing right now. So
Is that a promise or a threat?
it's a guarantee.
It's kind of a both. Everyone will be on this series when we're done.
Perfect.
Yes. Well, we guarantee it.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, again. And with that, we will close this episode. We will see everybody next time. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Hi, everybody.